o'clock. And with that, we will take a roll call. Do we have an agenda for this meeting to help? I don't. Bear
Yes.
with me.
Commissioner McLeod. Here. Commissioner Burton.
Here.
Commissioner Allen. Dawn.
I'll try it again. I'm here.
Commissioner Wallace.
Here.
Commissioner Lynn. Here.
Okay, and with that, we do the pledge of allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And then meeting minutes. Since we have meeting minutes in our package, did anyone have comments?
Not everybody got, did you all get meeting minutes?
Oh,
Yeah.
good. So we're packing that.
Yeah. They're in the back of
Yes.
the packet, yeah.
Okay.
Well, I read through your comments, Michelle, and they seem to accurate to me.
Yes, I'm very accurate. Thank you.
Would you like to hold off for approval of a meeting?
No,
minutes
I'm
until
okay.
you-
I'm okay.
Okay, are you sure?
Yes.
Okay, can I have a motion to approve the meeting minutes, please?
I approve.
Vote.
Hey,
Yay.
Okay,
Yeah,
hey.
thank you, dear. I do believe they were accurate. though.
Excuse me, who seconded?
Lynn,
Second, right here.
Yeah, we're supposed to
did you
our
say
name.
something, Margaret?
I just asked who seconded and
Okay.
Lynn seconded.
Okay. And with that, I guess we're just gonna have a chat tonight. Meet the new planner. What are we doing tonight? I don't have an agenda, so I apologize. You typically.
I think the agendas were missing out of the packets.
yeah.
Yeah, so I'm
That's what
kind
I
of
meant to
lost.
say.
I'm not really leading.
So. What did you guys do?
Thank you. That's what I meant to say,
Yes,
is I didn't have an agenda.
and we do need to have agendas distributed in our packet, so we kind of have a chance to look at them. Please.
Get it in the right order.
Hi, this is Brandon with SCJ Alliance. I'll give a little backstory on the agenda. So there's been a lot of focus and development on the sub-area plan and sequence of events that need to happen. And so, you know, part of I guess the challenge of of what to present and where we're at was, you know, clarification that the sub-area plan is what council considered in their first reading on Tuesday night. And that's just the sub-area plan. And so the development standards, which is what we want to just chat with you guys about tonight, with the commission about tonight, that's the next step. And so we have no action items on the agenda tonight, so rest assured it's really just an update and to let you all know what council decided on Tuesday night, and then really to prepare you all for the review of the development standards and an amendment to Title 17 in the municipal code, and prepare for you know, a public hearing and then a recommendation. And then ultimately we need to send those amendments to Department of Commerce for review. So we had to make some last minute changes to make sure we were accurate with what we were asking council to do on Tuesday night. And so I'll take responsibility for the packet. That's my fault, but I'm prepared to go over the development standards that are proposed, and then the amendment to Title 17 tonight, and then prep you all. We're on track to, you know, initiate this process through the planning commission and present a recommendation to the city council. So So yeah, and then the other thing I want to mention, which it sounds like you all met George, but I'm excited to see him in the room, although he doesn't need to start until mid-May. I'm super excited that Benton City finally got a planning director in-house, and timing couldn't be better around that. So thanks, George, for coming tonight. That's great to see you there.
Thank you very much. Looking forward to hearing about the plan and excited to be here.
So
Brandon, could I just briefly describe what we've done so far?
absolutely, that'd be perfect. And before you do that, Michael, so I do have an agenda in front of me, and there are 2 items that we're going to discuss. And so that's the decision or where city council is at in approving the sub-area plan. That's the first item. And then the second one is just to review the development standards, which are draft and in proposal. And that's what you all will start to consider over the next, probably 2 or 3 months. And so maybe before you do, Michael, so Michael Mahaffey's on here. He's the consultant is developing the sub-area plan, vision document and how we're going to implement that, and then developing the recommendations for development standards within the sub-area and amendments to Title 17. So before you do that, Michael, I'll give an update of what happened on Tuesday night with City Council. So
Perfect.
first off, they set a public hearing on Tuesday night. So they held an open public hearing, and that was optional. So the Planning Commission held the required public hearing on January 31st to provide a recommendation to City Council. So that checked the box on your requirements of what needed to happen in sequence. And so I feel like that's notable. The City Council held an optional public hearing Tuesday night to take comment and include the community and where we're at. There were no public comment provided. No one testified. No one spoke in favor or in opposition of the plan, and I think that's important to note. So City Council in Benton City, the sub-area plan will be approved through ordinance. And so in Benton City, we do 2 readings of the ordinance. And so they held first reading of the ordinance to approve the sub-area plan on Tuesday night. And so that's where we're at. So obviously, that's going to be, tabled and held until the second reading, where they'll take action to, approve or deny the sub-area plan. And that was a tremendous step, because sub-area plans are a lot of work and take a lot of time. Especially, making sure that we do it appropriately and accurately with what we all want to happen in Benton City. And so council action will approve the sub-area plan, and then the subsequent steps that we'll go through is the development standards, which will apply to the sub-area plan, and then the amendment to Title 17, which is the section of the municipal code that covers land use processes, so short plats, subdivisions. So there will be a new section in Title 17 that covers sub-area requirements. So are there any questions about any of those processes or what occurred on Tuesday night with City Council?
Yes, I'd like to speak if I could. This is Don Allen.
Yes, Don, you are recognized.
Thank you. Brandon, we're talking about Title 17 again, so I don't remember. I watched and I attended the meeting from Tuesday. I was there. I don't remember discussing that at the time. So you did bring that up at that time about Title 17?
Yeah, well, so the item that City Council was taking action on Tuesday night was to, consider first reading to adopt the sub-area plan through city ordinance. So basically that will set the limits of the area, which properties, which parcels, the acreage of what the sub area will encompass. And then it'll approve the planning document that's been presented in January. So the planning document shows like consistency or concurrence with Benton City comprehensive planning. So goals and objectives of the city and how it complies with those requirements. And then it establishes like a vision of how the sub area is going to be developed. So that was approved on Tuesday, or not approved. It was first reading was held. Yes.
Yeah.
And so now the next steps are we are going to propose amendments to the development standards. So Title 20. And so in Title 20, there are sections that relate specifically to the zones within Benton City, right?
Okay.
Residential, industrial, commercial. So there will be a new section of those development standards that are specifically applicable to the sub-area plan, the sub-area limits. The other piece, Title 17, is, covering like land division requirements within the city. And so the sub-area plan is going to create a new section in Title 17. So for example, if an investor wanted to do a project in the sub-area plan, and let's just say it's 50 acres, they're going to refer to Title 17, the sub-area section, to look at how that's processed through Benton City. So our amendments to Title 17 won't have any adjustments to short plats, long plats, subdivisions. It'll just be incorporated in a new Title 17 section.
And for specifically for what that project that you're talking about, is that what you're up to?
Correct.
So it's taking care of that as a separate issue.
Correct.
Okay. So what's going to happen? What's happening with Title 17 as it is now? Are we doing anything with that?
I'm not doing anything. I've not been directed to do anything. I have no work around Title 17 to review or amend it. So my scope of work right now is to support the city and city staff, and then Mr. Mahaffey on incorporating new development requirements into your municipal code, which is specific to the sub-area plan.
Okay. I do have, I got online and I got the agenda for tonight, but evidently we didn't get that. Not everybody got that evidently. So I do have the agenda before me, but another thing I would like to bring up to your attention that you promised us was on our last meeting, and we read the minutes, that you were going to have this packages out to us on the 13th. And
Yeah.
that was supposed to be the case. Well, we got it again this time, 2 days before. And that's not acceptable in my view. Whatever everybody else may think, that's fine. But my thinking of, we were promised that 13th, and I'm sorry to say we didn't get that. And I would really want that to happen because it gives us some time to really look at this stuff. And rather than, because a lot of these people that are on the planning commission, they have full-time jobs, and I don't, but a lot of people do. And there's a lot of time that they have to spend on this and to be a package and to be fair with it. I'm sure you understand what I'm saying. And so I was hoping that we could kind of get that going again and not have that issue, but.
Yeah, I'm sorry, Mr. Allen, about that. I'll take full responsibility for it.
Michelle wanted to add something.
Dawn, there was a email that went out that had a link in it that has all of this in it that you could probably cast onto your TV and watch. But I did call too about it, and they weren't going to send it out because we had the link on the computer to watch it. So I think that's where we're at, is that there was a little slip in the technology part.
Okay.
I don't think anyone's responsible for it. I just think that it's something that that happened, and just like in the minutes, my name's spelled incorrectly all the way through it. But I don't think that that's as important as the information that we're going to hear today. So
This is Jeannie Wallace, and I just wanted to say that I understand and support the logic, and I remember the discussion, but we need to be very explicit how we are going to communicate technical information we address in this commission. And I don't have a problem with it coming out, but I was not aware or prepared to go online and address it that way, or that was my expectation. So please, if we're gonna if you expect us to do it electronically, please get confirmation in this meeting,
And
please.
this is Michelle McLeod again. I work like 40 to 70 hours a week. So I take my packet with me. So my packet's important because the school district blocks our internet feed. So I like to have the packet so I can take it with me.
Me too.
This is Margaret, and I'd like to say a little something. The reason that you didn't actually get packets is there's no action for council, for the planning commission tonight, no action. And
We
so
did get packets, Margaret.
you did?
We did
Yes,
end up
we
getting
did.
them because I
Okay.
called.
We did.
Okay, but since there was no action, it was just, and you've already gone over everything.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for
The
the
other-
confirmation, Margaret. It's just Dawn probably doesn't know that there's a link.
Yeah. And
I did not know.
again, this is Brandon, SCJ, and I will take responsibility for this. And again, we had, things are moving really quickly around the sub area and many other things in Benton City. And so the issue we were up against is putting the review of these development standards in due process. And so I know I totally appreciate how frustrating it is where you're not able to review something, but honestly, it was premature. And so that's where we pulled it, making sure it was clear that the only thing city council was reviewing was approving the sub area plan. And that, like, honestly, is in the best interest of the planning commission. So when you receive these proposed development standards, which we still need to pin down completely to start review on them, when you receive these development standards and they're subject to public record and they're prior to a recommendation to city council or submittal to Department of Commerce, like, we want to make sure it's accurate and it's gone through the appropriate level of review, which means Mr. Mahaffey proposes them, staff and, city council and the mayor review them, give myself, SCJ, the green light to, propose a recommended amendment to Department of Commerce. And so, that's where we just kind of had to pause and make sure we were appropriate in our steps. And so, with that, the other reason Margaret is completely right, or on point there, that, we have no action for tonight. And so the intent is really for Mr. Mahaffey and I to kind of show you where we're at and what you'll expect to see, review, and then provide a recommendation, over the, subsequent months here. But I apologize for that. Honestly, I know that's really frustrating for you all, and you have other jobs, duties, you have a family to care for, and you need this well in advance. So that's I'll take responsibility for that.
Yes, and please, I'm trying to make this a better process moving forward. That's where we're looking at here, and there's a lot of new people here, and this is a very dynamic commission, so it's going to continue to change. And it's very important because we are not employees of the city. We do not have the same electronic equipment and capabilities available to us. And so each and every one of us will work to our ability to fulfill our capacity to with whatever capabilities we have. And that means electronically, because I know some.
This is Michelle, and I just want to say that you guys are new to us, but we've got 4 new people sitting here too. So
Yes.
we've had a lot of turnover. Sunshine, or Miss Wallace has been here since like 9 years
Too
ago.
long.
And I've been here for over 8. And so we've had a lot of people sitting next to us. And I think that that's important for you to know, that we're all just trying to learn what we're doing and what the plan is. And not all of us were at the planning meetings, the public ones for that's in this packet. And so it's important for them to read that so that we're all up to speed. I guess that's a good way to say it.
Yes, and I was very grateful because I was on vacation. I was not able to attend that workshop. And I really like the data we got in the back. I'd like to talk about some topics for future workshops from the data we gleaned from the workshop. I think you ladies attended.
Yeah, I
Yes,
went both days.
we both
Yeah.
did. And so did two of the council ladies and the mayor.
Yeah, so thank you. Jenny has has the floor. Come on out.
Jenny with the city of Benton City. So since and I'm still learning the process, Brandon, I kind of had a question. I know on this agenda, it says that there is the development standards inside of here. What does that look like? I mean, does that look like codes that are going to define the development standards?
So this is Michael Mahaffey. Greetings, commission members. I just wanted to suggest that given that this does seem to be taking the commission a little bit by surprise, that Brandon, maybe I should just run through this presentation very briefly, because there is a very orderly process that came out of the sub-area planning that we did last summer, and moving right into the development standards and the zoning that we're required by state law to produce. And I think we really should do a good job in explaining to you where we are and why we got to this point. It is a very orderly process that involved a lot of public involvement, 143 participants, and I'd be happy to run through that with you if you'd like me to.
I think I will refrain from speaking at this moment, but would like to speak after the presentation, if I have not had any
Yes.
further questions answered.
Thank you.
Okay, do that. Thanks.
So I have actually the presentation that I can present to you. There's also a similar presentation that I made to the council, but I'm wondering if maybe I shouldn't just go ahead and do that for you now to be able to give you the information so we can you can have a good discussion. Would that be appropriate?
It would be for me.
I think
Yes.
that would help
Yeah.
the people that didn't go to the presentation in the first place. Yes.
Okay,
Okay. I'll be happy to do that. So Margaret, I don't know if you can give me the permission to share my screen. I'll go ahead and do that.
It would probably be JB.
Or JB, whoever's whoever can let me do that. Let's see, it says I'm viewing Benton City screen. Let me see if I can. Yeah, I still can't share my screen. I think you may have to make me a co-host or something like that. I still can't share screen yet. It's probably the green button down at the bottom, and if you say multiple participants can share, something like that. There it is. There we go.
Right hand corner.
Great. Can you all see my screen now?
Yes.
Great. All right, I'll try to run through this fairly quickly, but fairly thoroughly. So last summer, we did the sub-area planning process. And that was the plan that, as Brandon was explaining, was approved by the council or had the first reading in the hearing by the council on Tuesday. And then we're required by state law to enact the implementing ordinances.
Can
you
hear me?
Yes.
Sorry?
I don't want to.
Somebody interrupting?
I'm sorry.
Oh, go ahead. So we're required by the state to enact implementing ordinances, and one of those is the zoning ordinance that you see on the left, and one of those is the development standards that you see on the right. And then Brandon also referred to the Title 17, which is the subdivision ordinance, and that's a fairly minor tweak that's required there as well. So it's mainly the zoning ordinance that you see on the left and the development standards on the right. And these create essentially a separate district that has its own ability to do things that are really the highest and best use for that site and for Benton City, to benefit Benton City as the kind of gateway development right there on south of I-82. So this is the master plan that was completed last summer. This is a informal, we call it an illustrative master plan that shows a typical street pattern, typical uses. It's a mixed use development. There's commercial, light industrial, multifamily, single family, and then there's some civic uses all together in a very, we think, a very attractive mixed use development. And an applicant coming to you would propose something similar to this. They might vary it in a number of ways, and they would explain to you why they're varying it based upon, what's the intent of the sub-area plan. So as I was saying, the state law requires us to do the implementing development regulations, and those include the zoning district and the development standards, and that's what we're talking about tonight. So the general approach that we've taken in these documents is to recognize this as a unique district of the city, to allow flexibility for different users to come along to achieve the highest and best use, and provide the guidelines to ensure that it has compatibility and that any conflicts between the different uses are addressed through these design standards and through the zoning. And these are derived from the community survey, the visual preference survey, and the sub-area plan. As I mentioned, we had a lot of data coming in from that, 143 participants. We have a combination of requirements. Some of them are fairly strict rules of the road, if you will, that are typical for the sort of public realm, how you design the streets, how you create the public realm and the public face of buildings that face the streets and so on. And then there are more sort of aspirational vision materials that create incentives that allow people, if they come in with, meeting the vision of this sub-area plan, that they'll get faster approval. And that will be something that will be to their advantage to have a more coordinated market appeal. And that's the usual thing that you see in these kinds of guidelines, that you have the may, the should, and the shall. The shall is what you have to do. The should is what you really should do. And the may is more discretionary. So that's kind of the way these standards are developed. And that when, from a builder or a developer's point of view, it's really important to have clarity. And sometimes that's better than just open-ended flexibility. And let me see if I can read your mind, Planning Commission, we just want to know as developers or builders, and I've played that role myself, can we make a profit? Can we do something that's a good quality project that makes money and meets the goals of the plan? And that is what we want to get to at the end of the day. So there are really four pieces of this. There's the draft ordinance. There's the design that does the zoning, that enacts the sub-area plan, and then the ordinance that enacts the zoning. There's the draft design standards. There's the amendments to Title 20, which is the new mixed-use zone. And then, as I mentioned, there's a smaller tweak to Title 17, which is the subdivisions. It doesn't change what happens in the rest of Benton City. It only applies to this new zone in the sub-area plan. So the draft ordinance, I believe you have materials in your packet, or you should have those to review. And if not, I'll follow up with the city staff to make sure you get those. I think that we were asking our city attorney to review those before you had a review of them yourself. I don't know if Dan Hyde has had a chance to do that, but this would be the ordinance that actually enacts the design standards and the zoning requirements. I won't go through this in great detail, but essentially it's implementing the development regulations, and it's following from the last summer's planning process and public involvement process that had 143 participants, 111 Benton City residents, 38 employees in the city, 22 were active volunteers, 12 served on a local board, 19 in the Red Mountain area, and 6 working in the Red Mountain area. So a lot of input, a lot of involvement in this process, a lot of data that has been generated, and that is included, by the way, in the appendix of the design standards document. Here's again a lot of the data that's been collated, looking at the survey data, the visual preference data, and the goals that people had. Clearly, there was a strong preference for growing commercial areas. Aesthetics were very important for Benton City residents. Employment opportunities were very important, as you see here. And parks are very important. And some of the other goals, as you see, are somewhat less important, but all very important. Then we collated the visual preference surveys. We looked at 12 different areas and asked people to rate the different alternatives, the sort of typical standard, and then the proposal for this area. And we collated that data. And as you can see, we looked at where we had clear preferences versus maybe not so clear preferences. And we used those to formulate the design standards. And that is what really fed into this document that I believe you will have in your packets of information, or you should. We'll make sure that you do once we get to the hearing stage of this. And there's just briefly, I'll run through the document. There's an introduction section that tells people how the document was created, how to use the document. Then there's a section on the public infrastructure areas, the streets and rights of way. There's sections for each of those that give the very generous streets and sidewalks and so on. Going out to the perimeter of the site as well, Field Road and Jacobs Road, and so on, and then also paths and trails. Then this is a more typical sort of zoning document that gives the typical setbacks and frontage zones and orientations of the buildings and so on for the different kinds of building types that might be included in this sub area. Going from residential to commercial to light industrial or compatible industrial. The orientations of the buildings, the way they face the street and have entrances on the street, have a lot of glazing. We heard that was very important to folks for commercial buildings, but also for residential, multifamily residential buildings. We heard it was very important for the small town traditional character of these buildings. Benton City wanted to retain that small town character. That was very important. Having compatible industrial, not just ugly sort of institutional buildings, but pedestrian friendly, compatible. This is an example or precedent from Sebastopol, California, that shows an example of that. Down to the level of landscape design, signage, utilities, and so on, very important as well. And then there's a section on the building design guidelines, and these are more aspirational. They're not hard and fast rules, except that we do propose that certain elements would be prohibited. That is not to say, though, that an applicant couldn't come to you and say, I know this is prohibited, but here's why you, Planning Commission, and you, Council, should approve this because there's an overriding need or the economics doesn't work or whatever it is. We're trying to be realistic and market facing, but at the same time to provide clear rules of the road that, look, there are aspirations here. There's a quality of aesthetics that is very important to the citizens of Benton City. Again, to retain that small town traditional character. And we want to retain that in our overall volumes, our building compositions, our door and window placements, the roof structures, soffits, fascia, and trim, all the sort of details that make or break the character of a building, building materials and detailing, porches, decks, and balconies, and so on. And, you know, I think it's very important, by the way, to provide this kind of clarity ahead of the process so that it's not just a game of, well, see if you can read my mind as a planning commission, because that can lead to the worst of both outcomes. It can lead to a longer, more expensive process. It can lead to people not really getting what anybody wants at the end of the day. If you're clear at the outset, here are the guidelines, here are the standards, please meet these. And if you don't want to meet them and you have a good reason, then you can come to us. But if you do, you're going to have ready approval. And that goes to, you know, color palettes, landscape character, fences and hedges, all of those sorts of things. And then finally, we have a series of appendices, and one of them is a project pattern language, and that is more of an aspirational document that describes the vision of this sub-area and this idea that it's a hill town, that it has a wine country character, that it has a hike and bike trail system, you know, the sort of aspirational qualities that certainly the citizens expressed to us and that we recognize were great opportunities for this site. But these aren't hard and fast rules. These are more vision statements. And this process of a pattern language is something that we've done elsewhere. It was done for Vista Field, Port of Kennewick. It's been done for West Richland and for a number of other cities and towns in Washington and around the country, around the world, really. It's been a very successful kind of vision document for communicating the character that is intended. And then also some of the other outcomes of the master planning process, the vision, the documents of for example, the renderings that we made, the color palettes, the kind of character of aesthetics, the wine country character. You can see the Hedges Winery there in the middle right, and other characteristics that communicate to a developer or a builder or a user, hey, this is the vision that we want to get on the same page. And if you have a reason not to, we'll consider that. But please consider getting on the same page before you come to us and recognize why we're creating these vision documents and what the aspirations are for this site. Again, some of these other vision documents that show how the buildings could cluster around public spaces, they could step down the hillside, they could have cottage courts, and so on. And other characteristics, this is on the upper right, is a destination hotel, a precedent from Park City, Utah, that the mayor identified. Again, the light industrial that I was talking about, that's very pedestrian friendly and very appealing. And we think that these kinds of documents could be very attractive as a kind of gateway development for Benton City, something that becomes a trendsetter for the community and helps to grow the city, grow the downtown, not just carving away some of the economic opportunities from the downtown, but helping downtown Benton City to become a focal point as well, bringing people into it. Again, the wine country vision and so on. Not that you're going to, imitate Tuscany or something like that, but this is a great opportunity. You have this growing wine region characteristics and the market demand and so on. So it's something that really can be seized on. And the idea that you can have a small town traditional urban characteristics, the houses, the commercial buildings and so on. And these are some other precedents from around the country that are
quite successful, quite economically profitable for the builders and developers. And we wanted to create that incentive for builders and developers who come along who say, hey, I can do this. I can make a good return on my investment, and I can do a really attractive development that's going to help Benton City to grow. These are some national builders who have done some nice developments as well that would meet our design standards, by the way. And then the last section we had was looking at garage orientations. We found that there was a split decision on whether to orient the garages to the front or to the rear with alleys. And of course, in Benton City and in the Tri-Cities, you may know, the alleys have had a somewhat controversial reputation, but we found that they can be a quite appealing option to make a very pedestrian-friendly building front. And one of the issues that builders sometimes raise is the cost issue. But it turns out, as this analysis shows, that you can actually save money by doing garages on the alleys as a builder or a developer, depending on the lot configuration. So that's what this particular appendix shows. It's a way of incentivizing for the builders and developers to consider that option, consider in this sub-area plan making a more pedestrian-friendly streetscape. So you don't just have the garages in the front and a lot of parking in the front. You can have that, but you want to make sure that the garages are aesthetically positioned to not disrupt the walkable streetscape, the traditional small town character that we're after here. You don't just want it to look like a cookie cutter subdivision on your gateway to the city. Then the last section is the details of the visual preference survey and the stakeholder survey data that we gathered. A lot of comments, a lot of data as well. Now, this is, I wanted to just briefly talk about the Title 20, which is the zoning amendment that proposes what would be called the Benton City South Mixed Use Zone. This is not affecting any of the other zoning in Benton City. It would create a unique standalone zone that would allow all of these different uses that we're talking about, and would simply describe how those different uses are buffered from one another so that the impacts are not disruptive. And that's what the design standards do in combination with the design standards. This drawing on the right is the illustrative or the regulating plan, as we refer to it, that shows the different uses, the commercial, the multifamily, the residential, the parks and open spaces. You'll see that big green area to the right, which is the mostly unbuildable area, the very steep slope that would become open space, very attractive open space for the development. And then, as I mentioned, the Title 17, which is a smaller tweak that simply creates a special district for this site that is a standalone district and doesn't affect any of the other zoning in Benton City. And that is the brief overview. I hope that's helpful in just giving you a picture of what we've done so far and how we have taken what I think you've already seen in more detail, the sub-area plan, and translated that into the implementing regulations as we're required to do by state law. So having presented all of that information, I welcome your questions or comments at this point.
Any comments, commissioners? Jenny, of course. I do not believe any commissioners have comment. Yeah,
George. This is George. Michael, I want to congratulate you on, or compliment you on the presentation and the development of the design standards. I think that it will be very helpful, both from a developer's point of view.
Get a little closer to the mic.
Oh. I'm sorry, Michael, this is George. I just want to compliment you on your presentation and your work there. I think that's very a good format. Would be very helpful for future development, as well as for the Planning Commission to take a look at those design standards. I think you did a really good job on that.
Thank you very much.
This is Commissioner McLeod, and I enjoyed the packet, and I think it fits the vision of the people that were here at the meeting, and I hope that the city ends up very excited about it.
Thank you. We're very excited also. We think this is a great opportunity for the city, you know, a gateway development that can, as I said, can really benefit the city as a whole, not just as a standalone, you know, carving out or you know, taking away from the downtown, but really bringing people into the downtown and helping to revive the whole city as a, you know, a development, an exciting new development.
Jenny, did you have any questions? Yeah, we welcome Jenny to the floor.
Jenny with the city, and Michael, George is correct. You did an amazing job on this presentation. I've been following it since you guys have began. Yeah, it is awesome. My question is actually for the commissioners, was what he just presented in the packet?
Yes.
Okay, and it
Yes.
had the breakdown for the new codes in there.
There's a link that Margaret could send you, and you could watch the full presentation.
Right. I've seen the presentation. I was just like, just kind of, because I'm learning how planning commission works and as well as council. And one thing I've noticed is when we start to amend codes or add codes to our Benton City municipal codes, it's very important, you know, to kind of comb through those and make sure that's what we're wanting as a community.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, because I know it fits the criteria for our big picture, but sometimes there's some little, you know, hints and jives that, you know, that may not be working well for other, you know, for the whole community in one. That's all I wanted to say, I guess.
This
and make
is
sure.
Michelle McLeod, and I'm sure that we'll have packets on the amendments and we'll hash it over, and you're
Okay.
always here, which is wonderful.
Yeah, well, that's what I was wondering. I wasn't sure. I don't think they had seen that yet, except in this presentation when you go online to see those amendments, if I'm correct. So then how does that work? Basically, we are moving forward and we're doing the hearings, and then are these codes going for approval as well with the master plan movement,
But-
or that's something that happens later where they'll be able to have the chance to look through those before they're approved?
Well, let me step in here, Jenny, and explain in just a little more detail of what the commission's role is right now. I think this is a good opportunity because I think it'll help you too. So,
Perfect.
okay. So what the planning, or I'm sorry, what the city council is approving is the sub area plan, which includes what Mr. Mahaffey is working on with design standards. Okay. And so think of this, design standards and development standards are two very different aspects. Okay. And so when we think about that presentation where it's design standards, you know, how the neighborhood should look, what types of materials to use, you know, all those very specific details are design criteria that, you know, potential investors, development or developers will consider when they want to build a project in the sub area. They have to follow those design standards. What Title 20 does is it implements development standards, which that breaks it down to like basic requirements. You know, what's a permitted use in that area? You know, what's a conditional use in that area? You know, what the setback requirements are, you know, what the building height requirements are, very basic, you know, development standards. So Title 20 will address those aspects, which is in draft, and which is why we're holding that back, because that's not codified yet. And so that will be the guiding document for municipal code when we consider approving an application for development. The design standards piece is going to be a little more flexible, you know, so these folks can make decisions, what they want their project to look like, how they want it to benefit the community, you know, what they're trying to accomplish with their design, all those details. And then the other piece, Title 17, is really the administrative requirements. So how a project is processed through the city. Like, does it require to go to planning commission? Does it require to go to city council? What are the public notice requirements? So we have three things there, and I'll just kind of review this again one more time, and I'll start from the hierarchy. So Title 17 is going to provide the administrative guidance of how we process project applications in the sub-area. And then Title 20 is going to provide the development standards that have to be met for the sub-area plan. And then the design standards, which Mr. Mahaffey's working on, are going to be the, you know, the creativity that folks can apply to their projects. Does that make sense? And so the
Brandon, there's
planning
there's
commission,
one element of that that's a little bit innovative and different here, which is, and this is a fairly recent trend, the idea of what's called form-based codes. So the development standards and the design standards do actually overlap a little bit in some areas. If you notice in that document that I briefly presented to you, the first part of it is the development standards that say, here's the street, here's the lot, here's where your building goes, your setbacks, et cetera. And then the second part of that was more about, here's how you can build your buildings and your aesthetics and so on. But there are parts sort of in between those two sort of ends of the spectrum that say that, hey, you need to put your entrance on the street, you need to put your parking behind the building, you need to have a certain amount of glazing. Those are development standards that are also essentially design standards that are you know, what we call form-based codes, essentially. So it's a little bit more, it's not quite as segmented as in the older traditional model of zoning, if that makes sense. Does that track with what you're understanding, Brandon?
yeah, and that makes sense, and that's fine. I'm just saying where we're at in the process, like if this code is being proposed to function in that manner, then we are prepping the planning commission to review it and consider a recommendation.
Right.
And so, and that's fine. You know, there may be innovative ways to set up a development standard requirement for the sub-area plan. The point is, we're about to start, you know, draft readings and public hearings, and ultimately the planning commission is going to make a recommendation that's like, yeah, this makes sense. You know, we love it, and we can follow this, and we're going to recommend to city council, you know, we do X, Y, and Z. I'm just saying that's where we're at right now.
Yeah, and I think actually the document that we have that I basically presented tonight includes both of those things. It includes the development standards and the design standards. We're calling it just the development standards document, and it includes a section on design standards. So Brandon, I think that would all be subsumed into that. If that's what the city council and the planning commission want to approve, then I would recommend that we just move forward with that, or if they want to make revisions, they make revisions, but we not delay a second piece of that.
Yeah, no, I'm with you. And I feel, you know, I mean, we're all motivated to do the same thing here. And I just want to make sure I'm preparing the planning commission for the steps that we're going to go through, and that we're actually, like, schedule wise, we're on task to do that.
Yeah.
And so some specific things that I saw in the proposed, you know, Title 20 is, you know, there were two references there that require planning commission to make a decision on if it's a compatible use in the area. And so, you know, that's a detail where I felt like, you know, we really need to understand how we implement this. And when we provide it to the planning commission for review, you know, we need to, you know, make sure they're prepared for that, or they understand, you know, what's being proposed to be incorporated into the municipal code.
Right. And I think that's something that we're hearing statewide as well, is that the state wants to see more objective, clear-cut standards for approval and not so much of the sort of subjective, read my mind kind of thing as I was referring to. And that's what we're trying to do here is we're trying to give a really clear body of not only the must, the shall, but also the should and the may, so that I, as an applicant, can come to you as a planning commission and say, well, I'm going to do this, but I would like to do this. And okay, you said you were going to let me do it, so please approve this, smoothly rather than going back and forth. And I think at the statewide level, they want to see that. And I think from a developer's point of view, that's certainly what they want to see is they want clarity, that in some ways that matters more than what the specific requirements are. If they say, okay, I know what I got to do, I know I can make money, then I'm gonna do that and I'm fine with that. So
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And I think that's where, where we're at in the process and, the work that you've done to, go through the public process, the workshops, the charrette, and then, present like a visionary plan for the sub area. I mean, I think it's great and it's perfect. It's perfect. It provides, I think it seems like what Benton City's wanting, for development and character of the community and economic drivers for, projects and development. And I feel like, the tools are there. So when we do propose amendments to Title 20 and Title 17, it can do just what you said, provide the benefit to the Benton City, but also some flexibility to the developer. So
right, market facing dynamics and so on, but still meeting the public interest and the interest of the planning commission and seeing good quality. So yeah, that's our goal.
yeah. So Jenny, I don't know if that answered your question or not. And I mean, if you have,
No, it
Maybe.
did. But we did just have a new Title 20 codified as well, which I noticed it does have standards in it for the R3 for, the pitch of the roof, right? I mean, those are.
Jenny, we can't hear you.
Oh,
You got to speak louder.
okay. So Title 20 just got codified. It got amended, right? And so we made a whole new Title 20 and in there. So I guess I'm confused on that is it does have standards for pitches of roofs, overhang on the side, siding coming down. So those are not considered development standards, or are they?
they are for those zoning districts, but
Okay.
they will not be applicable for the sub area plan. So, okay,
Oh.
so, I mean, this is a great topic to talk so we can clarify. So when the sub area plan has development standards and folks can propose a project, and let's say it's a residential, let's say somebody's gonna, build 10 acres of residential complex in the sub area. The R3 zoning requirements are not going to be applicable to the sub area. It's going to be the design standards that Mr. Mahaffey is working on, and then the proposed amendment to Title 20, which will be a brand new section.
Right,
So if
with its
somebody
own
says-
standards for that area, correct?
Yep.
With pitches of roofs,
That's
Yep.
fascia to the, okay.
this Michelle
Yeah.
McLeod, and we know what you're talking about because I've worked on 17 on and off for 10 years. And we recently did massive changes on it and we worked hours on it tirelessly. And we also worked on 20. And so we're aware of that. We're just, of course, not aware exactly of what the changes in the amendments will be because we're not that far as
Right.
as getting the packets and all the information in front of us, but we do understand what you're saying. It'll help to clear that up because since that is Benton City as well, and it's going to be in the same titles and chapters, somehow we need to link that together as a group, and it will help when we have packets that do that. But I love this presentation.
Mhm.
Yes.
I think it's wonderful.
Yes.
Thank you. Well, let me just explain to our intention, and again, that you as a commission and the council could certainly decide to take some of these ideas into the rest of the Title 20 and or Title 17, but we didn't want to tamper with anything else in the city. We didn't feel it was our mandate. We felt it was our focus only on the sub area, and that our recommendation was to make a standalone zoning district with standalone design standards, and that's what the 20.37 does, and that's what the 17 point, I forget what it is now, just one little piece of 17 added to it that deals with Benton City South, so that we're not upsetting the apple cart on all these other issues. However, if you wanted to take some of those elements and apply them citywide, you could do that, but we didn't feel that that was in our mandate to consider.
Well, I don't know that it is, but in some way, this is Michelle McLeod again, we need to look down the road to the future and have some sort of common link, since we're one town. That's all I'm saying here.
Yeah,
'Cause,
right.
Commissioner Wallace and I worked on the 20-year plan. And also, like I said, these 17 and 20 and many other codes. And so somehow I can see where we're going to have an amendment, and it's going to change some of the standards for across the river. But looking down the road, we need a common link in our amendments as we go, so that
Right.
Benton City can all feel like they're part of that at some point.
Yeah.
Right. And we thought that the sub area plan specifically could do some things that you might consider a little bit more innovative. And then you could consider adopting those in the rest of the city. But I know you've put a lot of work already into the rest of the city, and we didn't want to, address any of those things because it wasn't our scope of work or our responsibility. We didn't think it was in our remit to have
And it probably wasn't. That was between you and the contract with the city. Commissioner Lynn has.
Oh, I
some-
agree with Commissioner McLeod this is going to be all one city. I live in a new development. There's another new development that's going in up there. They're all having similar, structures, details and stuff. And if we're going to treat this as a small town feel and everything, you would want to have that area over there have the same type of feel than as the rest of the city does with it. And it just kind of perplexes me. I guess you're saying we still can do that and have the same standards, but if we're going to, it's this small town, we want to keep it small, that we want to keep it like this. And, if we make that area a whole different, totally look, to me, that just separates the city.
I wouldn't recommend that, but I would recommend that you take the opportunity to be a little different. I mean, of course, you have different neighborhoods in any city or town. You have different, you have the central downtown area, you have the quieter residential areas. So they might have different characteristics. I wouldn't say that you have to have the same standards for every part of the city. On the other hand, if you wanted to take some of the more innovative things that we're proposing for this site, which has some very unique opportunities related to wineries and tourism and so on, but you thought, well, we ought to incorporate those into the rest of the city. Well, there's certainly the opportunity to do that as well.
Yes, this is Michelle McLeod, and that's what I was thinking as well, that people would have the opportunity to use those design standards over here as well. Because I know that you're hired to focus on the corridor, but we're focused on the whole picture.
Of course.
So that's just where maybe the confusion has come in.
And I don't think there's confusion. I think that this is Commissioner Wallace. And when I was looking at those development standards and taking those into consideration, it was not just for IHU South. I expected those to be imposed in Benton City, because if we don't, the city's gonna end up getting sued. Because you can't impose totally different standards
Yeah.
just on what side of the
Mhm.
freeway you live.
Well, I
on.
think if the
I'm-
amendment is, this is Michelle McLeod, if the amendment ends up in 20, it will give the opportunity for people in the general city already, the use of that ordinances.
But there's a difference between
Yeah.
a use and ordinances and imposition.
Yeah.
People don't choose to use them. It is imposed on them.
Yeah.
And so we need to just keep this. This was a great product that we got out of this effort, and it can be applied citywide. I just don't think that's what the contract scope was at the time. They kind of limited the scope, and it was a financially sound decision to make, and we got an excellent work product out of it that we can use to build upon to go forward is my
Well,
thought.
when we have chances to view the packets on the amendments, we could make recommendations that the city consider the actual city in the amendments of the 20,
Yeah, Mr. Burton.
the council.
I had a question for Mr. Mahaffey. To help us out, you're gonna do proposed design standards for this project. Do you have the ability to do any cost modeling for the end products, the houses and that in your proposal for us to look at?
We did do the alley loaded versus the front loaded garage cost modeling, and we worked with a civil engineer to get those numbers. We don't, there's so many variables when you're talking about the economics of development, but as a former builder and developer myself, I'm well aware and very sympathetic to the cost implications of these kinds of aesthetic decisions. And the approach we've taken is not to impose unreasonable burdens on the builders and developers, but to require things that are really more a matter of good judgment rather than, expensive new materials or other things that are going to cost a lot of money. So I don't think we have a lot of cost implications or cost increases associated with these design guidelines. Other than, again, what any builder or developer looks at in terms of, well, am I going to be able to, sell these for a profit? And is it going to be a reasonable proposition for me as a business case?
Second question, I like the idea of the alleys on some of the houses, but we live in a town where we have lots of boats, big pickups, RVs. And in the alleys, in my mind, there's going to be parking issues with that. Is there any thoughts of a mixed suggestion on the development between alleys and a normal neighborhood?
Yeah, I mean, we've done projects where they have a lot of boats and RVs and things, and you just need an additional space where, it's whether it's a 12-foot or 15-foot wide space that you can pull a boat in or an RV in off of the alley or off of the front of the house, if that's where the garage is, and make sure you've got that surface parking area.
Yeah, well, I was just curious. I got a pickup that's about 24 foot long and a boat trailer that's about 30 foot long. And I can't imagine parking it in an alley.
Right.
Other,
I think
right,
a lot
absolutely.
of
No,
space.
the other way to do that is just to have additional parking areas that are integrated into the development that allow people to, park their larger vehicles and trailers and other things that they may have.
On that note, I was just going to mention one one more thing. So, the idea of a sub-area plan is very intentional, and it's very like boundary oriented to where, like you're implementing a plan that like Mr. Mahaffey has put together, which has been at the direction of, Benton City electeds and community of, how that property needs to develop. And so with like some of these design standards and like the feel and the character and, how that area is expected to shape up, comes cost of, public infrastructure, roads, transportation, parks, open space, sewer, water, power. So it's a blank slate. It's a blank canvas. And so with development and investment into projects comes that burden. And so when we think about, the application of those design standards citywide, it's a little trickier because, it's not an apples to apples comparison. And the city also needs, diversity and options. And so that's why, purposefully, there's a new section of, Title 20 that covers the sub-area plan. I think absolutely, if there are design standards that the commission and the council want to apply citywide, then, you can completely take advantage of that and start to implement some of those changes. But the thing about the sub-area plan is it's very intentional on a specific area of property to implement, I guess, design and development standards that are going to be, intentionally applied to that area.
Yeah, and just to add to that, I think, there isn't any requirement, legally speaking, that you have to have one citywide design standard and you can't have any variations in different neighborhoods or different parts of the city, because very commonly you have overlay zones, you have, the downtown is going to have maybe design standards that other parts of the city don't have. So it's very typical that you don't have the same standard for the whole city. And it might be appropriate, as I think Brandon is suggesting, to have existing homeowners who are essentially grandfathered or allowed to, stay under the existing standards, whereas a new development coming into the sub area has a higher standard to meet. I don't think there's anything legally that would prevent you from maintaining a different standard. I mean, that's up to you, but the law doesn't require you to do that.
No, and I think if this discussion kind of went this way because of my comment, that was not the case. We have good products. We do have, I'll say, inconsistencies based on zoning and land use. I understand that. And there will be a variation, but you cannot have significantly different design standards for very similar developments just based on one being south of the freeway and one being developed here more centrally located to the downtown. That was my concern when I made that statement.
Well, legally you can, because you can have different overlay zones and they can have different.
I realize that. I'm just trying to alleviate this.
Yeah. I mean, you may not want to.
My comment was not to apply those standards citywide.
Yeah,
So that was not my intent, but I do think we should consider some of the stuff, the standards that were developed, maybe moving forward, the commission and the new planner could consider incorporating those into some existing codes for future development. That's what I was referring to.
Right. I would.
Thank you, Ms. Wallace.
And Commissioner Lynn would like the floor, so I'm going to give her the floor now.
Okay, Commissioner Lennon, I don't know, I know I'm new to the area. I've actually been here well over a year, but anyway, I'm new to the area. The area that I moved in was Mountain View. I look at this And it's a really nice neighborhood. It's very nice. And I know that there's a new housing development going also in the city. But nobody that lived here could afford to move into any of those houses. There's two people that live in that area from the general area. One, elderly couple from Richland, because they couldn't do a second story, and a young woman that's got a divorce that works at Hanford and could afford to get in here. I mean, the people that live in there, that grew up in here, they should have an option to be able to afford some type of housing so that maybe they could upgrade and still stay in their city, not that we lose the people that have lived here, worked here all their lives. That happened to my parents. And so I'm just really adamant. I'm trying to stick up for these people in this city that you hate. It got so that people from away were all moving in, the tax base went up. The people that worked there all their lives couldn't afford to keep their houses because the tax base went up so high that that a lot of them had to sell their houses. And, and I guess I just don't want to see that happen to this really nice city.
Thank you. Man, this is Michelle McLeod, and I understand just what you're saying because our family came here in 1943 and my daughter cannot afford a home here in the city and she's 38. So she lives in an apartment in town. So that's a very, very good point you make about affordability.
Okay, well, my family came here in
May I have the floor
1933,
to ask for it?
and my house 128 years old. I really couldn't afford to move. This is off the record. I'm sorry.
It's very casual.
We need levity there.
Jeannie, may I have the floor?
Don, yes, please, Don.
Thank you. First off, I would like to say, Brandon, I like the way you broke down when you talk about Title 17, you talk about Title 20, what the intentions are for the sub area. The idea of having them separate from the city and what the code is for us here is separate over there. Am I not correct?
Correct.
Correct. So I think that's a real positive thing because I think we can learn from that.
Right.
Yes.
That some of the things that you may pass or may do over there that we're not doing here that work out really well, and we can change our code to be better than what we are now. And I mean, those kind of
Absolutely.
things can happen. They very well could happen. And when you did your presentation, I have been to all your meetings. I've been to all, and I had a lot of people that spoke up and talked and brought up a lot of different information about this sub area. And they had a lot of concerns. You guys listened to everybody. And you wrote it down. I know that was a fact because I was there and I seen it happen. I think you did a superb job of doing this. I'm sure it was not easy. And my thought is to you right now is that if we're going to continue with this, and which it looks like we are, and I'm all in favor of it, what I'm concerned about is that you're talking about as a contractor and have been a contractor, that you're looking for ways to make it a lot simpler for a contractor to go up in that area and build something and put something together and try to keep it as simple as you possibly can with with less paperwork and red tape as absolute possible. That is the whole idea. A contractor wants that, an individual wants that. And if we can do that up there and have a code that's specifically for that area, which we're trying to do, then I think we can really learn from what you're talking about and Brandon's talking about. And if we have to make adjustments, we can. And if we can get people if they come up and want to build up there, and you can bring up and you're good to work with, you listen, you're open-minded, all those things, that really means a lot because the contractors get together, and if they find that we are a real problem to work with and or we have a real hard code to get into, or we have a lot of problems, lack for something better, then they're going to be shy away from us and probably don't want to build up there. And that could carry on. We don't want that. And we want them to build up there and make it as simple and as easy as we possibly can without all the rigmarole. We got too much of that right now and we need less. And so if we can encourage people to go up there and do that, I'm all in favor of it. I like the idea of Titles 20 has been specific to that area up there, and amend Title 17 and make its own for that area up there, and addresses only that area up there. I think that's a real positive thing, very positive. And I commend you on what you have done. I thank you for that.
Thank you. And just to add to that also, I think it's going to help with affordability. If you have more housing and you don't have the scarcity of housing supply that's driving up our prices as much as it is right now. So that's certainly part of the problem we all have in a lot
I
of places.
also want to say, you know, I'm sorry, I don't remember the lawyer's name. You may correct me. But Mike, okay, when he said about something, I thought that he really hit a nail on the head when he was talking about having an alley and getting into it. And if like you have a big pickup or, and you're trying to back something up, let's say for an example, you have a garage in the alley, off from the alley on your property that you built, built, and you got to back up that pickup and put a boat inside that garage. I mean, that's almost an impossibility with a big trailer and a boat. I mean, that's really hard. Or it could be any other thing. It doesn't do a whole lot of good to have a garage if you can't put something in it. Okay. And if you come in there and you got a car, you can open up the garage door and you can drive in. But if you want to put a trailer or something in there, then you got a problem. You got a huge problem. And I think I think that's where he was coming from. And I can see that happening, and I'm sure you can too. So, but the thing of it is, I think you're open-minded with this whole project up there, that you're going to get feedback from all these different people and all the different contractors and everybody else is all going to give you a lot of feedback that you can put together and say, this is what's going to work best. And I think that's what your plan is. I commend you that that's what you're going to do. I think that's outstanding, because that's what we need. We need organization, and just like Councilman Lynn talked about affordable housing, maybe we can get some houses up there that are not so big and in an area that would not be so expensive, and they don't need a whole lot of land. They just need something that they can live in, that they can afford. I can understand that. And I think that's a possibility there. And if the contractors are willing to put something like that up and we can make it happen, why not?
Yep. Great.
Thank you. I'll get off my soapbox.
That's okay, Don. We love to hear you talk. We always
Oh,
learn
yeah,
a lot
sure.
when you talk. Does anybody else have any discussion, comments? Everybody's gone.
Second.
Okay, second.
Okay.
Any more discussion? No. I think we're done here. Is there any more the presenters?
May I say one more thing?
Yes.
Just one more thing. Brandon, I apologize to you for getting a little harsh with the idea of not getting this package together, but the idea that I've had it happen in the past, and we've gotten packages a day before or 2 days before, and it just makes it really difficult to do. And I just don't want to get back into that same pattern. And that's why I got on you over that, because I don't want to see it happen anymore. So
Yeah.
I apologize, because I can get a little rough and I can get a little nasty, and I don't get the name Punchy for nothing. It doesn't. So
I want to say,
I gotta admit that. So, but
I
I
wanna
do
say-
appreciate what you're doing.
I want to say I appreciate that comment, Don, and I appreciate you. And yeah, I'm sorry. It was kind of a cluster the last 2 weeks, and it's my fault. But I love how passionate you are about Benton City, and that you're on, I think, almost every council meeting, every planning commission meeting, and I've met with you personally. And so, so yeah, I get your point. I'll
I
do better.
can be a thorn.
Yes. And at this point, please, everybody in this room and online, don't take any of this personally. Right now, we are in the forming, storming stage of the game. We've got new players, new contractors, new staff. I mean, relatively, if you've only been here less than a year.
Yeah, and I've only been here 2 weeks.
So, we're relatively learning how to work together and make the process better. I do not want to settle for just the way it's been. Or,
Right.
minimum effort. I want to make a process smooth and we'll work this out. We're going to make this
Right.
work.
Yeah.
There's only 4 of us that have been here a long time. And Margaret,
So anyhow, that
5.
was my last comment. Are we done here tonight for this meeting?
Is it time for a nap?
Would somebody like to make a motion? I will make a
I'll
motion.
make a motion that we close the
Okay.
meeting.
Adjourn.
Second.